I want to tell you about something that happened to me when I was much younger. It was back in the late 1980s, way before I had a cell phone or any of that crap. I was a teenager, and me and my friend, we encountered something that in retrospect, I can only really describe as a Bigfoot encounter. Please try and save your disbelief until the end, and at least hear me out before you judge me. Now, I grew up in the north of Wisconsin, not far away from where Florence County sits, if you're familiar with the place. The place that I grew up was fairly rural, and my dad was a big proponent of living off of the land and not accepting any kind of help at all from the government. He believed that most modern technology was a poison, and that the ways of the old was the only way to survive long term. He was a little bit of a nut, I suppose. But I suppose in the modern age, he would be considered a genius. He was paranoid about government surveillance and companies stuffing most food with unhealthy junk that would destroy your body way before most. He was also a prepper, so that didn't really help how I saw him. I thought he was a crazy asshole. Now, one thing he did instill in me, which I am grateful for to this day, is a good sense of independence and self-sufficiency. One of the ways he taught me this was hunting animals. From a pretty young age, I had a gun in my hand and I was being taught how to shoot. He was taking me on hunts where I would just shadow him and watch what he did. And once I got a little bit older, he would shadow me and test to see how much I had learned. Initially, I had no interest in hunting whatsoever. I was jealous of all my friends for having a quote-unquote normal life. I couldn't talk to my friends about the cool shit that they saw on TV. We didn't have a TV. I rarely, if ever, got to go to the movie theaters, and so I felt so isolated from all of my peers. I had nothing in common with any of them, and I ended up a loner, which made me feel miserable. So I resented my father and his way of life. I was determined to get away once I was old enough. I did eventually relent though, because he started to tell me all these crazy stories about hunting that really grabbed my attention. He would tell me stories about how he and his friend found some kind of sleeping beast in a cave and that it chased them. He'd tell me stories about finding Bigfoot and loads of other animals, but that there was more than one of him and that they had to flee. About hunting all kinds of cryptids that I'd never even heard of until he told me. These kinds of stories are coincidentally how I made one of my only friends, called Joshua. I would tell these crazy stories at lunchtime and on the playground, and he was one of the only boys who took to them, who even paid attention to me. We bonded through these crazy stories, and I convinced my father to let him stay over, and for my father to teach him how to hunt, just like me. This was back in the days before everyone had a stick up their ass about kids running free and learning from their mistakes. My dad didn't even ask permission from his father, just started bringing him with us on hunts. Joshua and I actually made a pact that once we were old enough to hunt on our own, we were going to find our own cryptid, that we were going to do what my dad couldn't and bring back the head of one. Obviously, when I grew up and I was around 16 years old or so, I got wise and realized my dad had likely made up all of the stories just to convince me to change my mind. I didn't hate him for it, but I didn't really believe in all that kind of stuff anymore. Still, Joshua and I still went hunting often, and this event happened on one of those days. So, me and Joshua, we weren't even really out there for anything specific at all. I think it had just gone spring break, so we were planning to spend a few days in a stretch of forest that was completely new to us. We liked to throw ourselves into new places and scout them out for later trips. It was always the most fun thing for us to do. If we managed to snag a deer or something else, even better. The forest that we set up in was decently remote. My dad trusted me, and we were experienced. We both had 30-06 rifles. Joshua had a Springfield that was just a spare that my father gave him. His dad was broke and also not very cool. I had a Remington 700 that I had just bought the summer prior. I had to work my ass off for my father to afford it, and I agreed with him that it would replace my birthday present that year. We set up our camp in the mid-afternoon, pretty much the same as always. We were in this little clearing, with a smallish stream not too far away, so we had a good source of water. The visibility was solid on all sides, only dropping once you got into the woods proper. I hated feeling boxed in, so this was good for me. It was just a really regular day, if a little quieter than usual. We had not really seen any animals on the way in, not even little ones, not even a squirrel or anything, and there wasn't really much birdsong going on, but I don't know, maybe we scared all of them off. Once we'd set up a fire going and had a few drinks to get us ready, we were planning on heading out early the next morning. The next morning rolled by and we got to work, and actually decided to split up for a little while to cover more ground. We weren't completely out of sight of each other, and we were well within earshot. We just liked to do this in completely new places, because it allowed us to scout out more of the area much quicker. After around an hour of this, I heard Joshua shout for me to come over and to look at something. He didn't sound panicked, so I was wondering what he found. When I made my way there, he was standing next to a set of tracks, but they weren't the tracks of a deer or anything. That much was obvious. I could see that Joshua was just in a pure state of shock, and his jaw was hanging wide open. These tracks were fresh and pressed deep into the soil. Whatever had made them must have had some serious weight behind it. I'm talking hundreds of pounds. And the weirdest thing is that they were shaped just like human footprints. Like a person had taken off their boots and just started putting all of their weight into their steps. Except, the footprints were huge, way bigger than any I'd ever seen before in my life. I'm not a short guy and neither is Joshua, but these prints must have been 2 or 3 times the size of our shoes. We just stood there discussing it while trying to make sense of it. The only things that we could come up with were that someone was messing around and trying to fool people passing through, or maybe someone had a serious deformity or some kind of issue with their growth. I think the problem for me was the spacing. The stride was much too wide. Each print was placed way too far apart for it to be comfortable for a person to walk naturally. And these went on for a while too. It would have had to have been one tall fucker for this to make sense. I'm talking world record tall. We both felt this feeling of fear that we could not explain, but we agreed to keep quiet about it for the rest of the trip. The rest of the day went entirely normally. That night, I remember that Joshua woke up pretty late on. I want to say midnight because he needed to piss. He was pretty paranoid about pissing near the camp. He said that he couldn't go if it felt like someone was too close or could see him. He told me that he would not be long, and he went out into the trees. He took a flashlight with him, and I relit the campfire so that he would be warm and be able to find his way back easily. Then I turned over and I went back to sleep. I woke up again. I'm not sure how long later, but the fire was out when I woke up, and Joshua was not back. Was this guy really taking a shit deep in the woods? I took my flashlight and called out to him, but I got no response. I just kept going and looking around for him. Where had this asshole gone? At one point of wading through the thick trees, I heard this noise, like something heavy was moving through the brush. I heard it moving somewhere further in front of me, and then I just heard a scream ring out. It sounded like Joshua, so I sped forward until I got to the edge of the thick trees and could see another clearing. I felt the ground almost shaking before I got there. Come to think of it, I think I felt that when I heard the snapping too. This clearing was much bigger than the one that we were camping in, with trees surrounding it on all sides. I shouted out for Joshua and asked if he was okay just before I broke out of the trees. I stopped dead in my tracks when I did this. Joshua was on the floor, flat on his back. It looked like he was completely passed out. His gun was back at the camp, so he was completely defenseless. He was just splayed out on the floor like he was doing a store jump. There was something hovering over him, low to the ground. This black mass, this shadow, I couldn't fully make it out. When I shouted out for Joshua, I saw it turn its head towards me in a quick snap, and I saw two yellow, reflective eyes staring straight at me. I see the thing go from low to the ground to towering over Joshua in the air. This thing must have been upwards of 8 feet tall at least. It stared at me for a little while, and then proceeded to pick Joshua up off of the floor and put him over its shoulder. I was paralyzed in fear at first. I couldn't move. It felt like my legs and my arms were not working at all. But when I saw this thing start to walk away with Joshua, I knew I had to help him. I shouted out, "Hey, stop," and raised my rifle up to shoulder height while running in this thing's direction. This piece of shit, it had Joshua in its arms, doing this fireman carry, and when it saw my gun, it actually raised Joshua up to its chest. And then it turned its back on me completely, so that his whole body was covered by this thing's body. I was still too shaky to take the shot, and when I didn't for a few seconds, this thing looked back at me over its shoulder, and it let out this roar. It was so loud it nearly blew out my eardrums. It made my shaking worse, and my legs almost just gave way. I could feel some kind of heat pass over in my direction when it let out the sound, like a mini heat wave. After this, the thing took its chance and just bounded off into the trees. I could feel the ground shaking more and more. I think this thing was sprinting. I tried to run after them, but I was much too slow, and my legs were shaking way too badly. No matter how fast I ran, this thing was just completely out of sight. Joshua was gone. All I could think to do was go back to my camp. I had no fucking way to get help or contact anyone at all. I went over to where Joshua had been passed out and picked up his flashlight and headed back. I was looking over my shoulder the entire way back. I was paranoid that that thing was going to come back for me. When I got back to camp, Joshua was already there. He was laying on one of those log things that you can sit on. He was still asleep, but oh my God, he was there. I don't know how he got there, how he managed to beat me back to camp, how he managed to escape from that thing. I ran over to him and shook him awake and started shouting at him and asked him how he got away from that thing. When he shut awake, he actually hit me in confusion and started backing away to the tent and telling me to keep away. It took him a while of me saying, "Joshua, it's me, your friend, it's me," for him to calm down and stop panicking. Joshua was completely unharmed. It was like a miracle. I asked him again how he escaped, and he told me that he didn't know, that he didn't escape. He told me that he just woke up in camp just now. Then he said, "Wait, it wasn't you that got me and carried me back here." I just shook my head without a word. Joshua was the first one to notice some tracks nearby to the camp. The same ones that we saw the other day, those giant human footprints, but coming into the camp from another direction. Seeing them so close by, it gave me the chills. I asked Joshua to tell me the entire story, and he did. He told me this. So, I went pretty far away from the camp. Being honest, I didn't want you to hear me taking a shit. Well, I didn't think far enough ahead because I realized I had nothing to wipe with. The only thing nearby were these thorny leaves and shit, so I tried waddling somewhere else with my pants down, trying to find better leaves. I really didn't feel like walking around with shit in my pants for another couple of days. Anyway, so I got to this clearing, the one that you found me in, and I wiped up. When I was doing this, I noticed a light coming from the end of the clearing, and I could hear noises. I thought maybe I'd finally found our first animal. I thought it was kind of weird that we hadn't run into a single one so far, even by accident. So I went to take a look and make a note of it for tomorrow. I got well into the trees and noticed some deer walking around, and then all of a sudden, I saw that thing. That 8-foot tall giant that's hairy as shit. I knew what it was. It had to be Bigfoot, right? Well, it stared me down. It knew I was there, and when I got too close to the edge of the trees, it ran after me. It ran to the edge of the trees on the other side and stood there, and I shit my pants and ran away. It walked and followed me until I got to where you found me. It just stood over me, watching me. I thought I was going to die, and I had no gun to fight back. And, well, I guess I passed out from fear. And that's when I woke back up here. Now, normally I would have just laughed and ridiculed Joshua, but this was serious. We started hatching a plan. We had to kill this thing, and this was our chance to get the drop on him. Neither of us could sleep that night. We were paranoid that this thing was going to come back to the camp and finish us off, that this thing wanted to lull us into a false sense of security, to kill us both at once. We didn't really have a great plan. It was mostly just shoot him a lot of times before he noticed us. As soon as daylight hit, we were back out where Joshua had passed out. It wasn't long before we found those tracks again. There was no hiding them. We were tracking this thing for a while throughout the day, but it kept managing to slip away from us. We caught glimpses of it ahead of us as we were tracking it, but it was never close. At one point, we just started sprinting at the thing as it was standing there. It was letting out roaring sounds while staring at us, and at one point, I saw it move both of its hands in this swiping motion. And all of a sudden, this massive tree just starts creaking and comes crashing down right in front of us. We had to hit the deck and run away, otherwise we would have been turned to mush by it. We didn't stop though. We didn't want to stop. You can call us stupid, but we felt like we had to do this. If we didn't kill it, we thought we would never make it home alive. Who knows how many people this thing had killed before us. It took some hours, but we managed to track it down again later in the day, when the sun was getting pretty low in the sky. There were only slivers of daylight left, and we found it. This thing was laying on the ground in a clearing, way deeper than we had ever gone before. We must have made some noise because the thing shot awake. We took aim, and this thing, it threw this massive rock at us. It picked it up and threw it like it was nothing. Dead quick too. We had no time to react at all. The rock, thankfully, it went sailing over our heads, and we both took shots at this thing as it proceeded to bound away. Its footsteps were so heavy, and its strides were so long, it was absolutely insane. We definitely connected with this thing, because when we did, it started to make this wailing sound. It sounded like when a dog whimpers, but much deeper and more human-like, more gruff, I would say. We could hear the sounds of so many animals nearby now. It was like we'd hit the jackpot after not hearing or seeing any for so long. There were birds chirping, there was deer running around. All of them were fleeing in different directions. Joshua saw this literal herd of deer running away and said screw it. This massive creature was running well away, and there was no way we would catch it anymore. We were well and truly beaten. So Joshua took aim, and he managed to hit a deer center mass. We watched it as it just went careening to the ground and stumbled. It was a clean kill, and we were already thinking about the meal that we were going to eat tonight. Joshua was so excited. It was like he'd been kill-starved. He hadn't shot an animal for so long, it was like it was driving him crazy, and he was so happy and excited. I wish that this story ended there. I really did. The creature, Bigfoot, whatever you wanted to call it, it turned around, back towards us. And for the first time, it came running towards us with this insane speed that I didn't realize it even really had. It looked furious from what I could make out from its face. It was heading directly for us. We both started shooting while backing away, but it wasn't doing anything anymore. It wasn't even shouting in pain like it had been when it was running away before, even when we hit it near the face. It closed the gap to us so quickly with this weird and awkward leap. I didn't think any animal could leap the distance that it did. It was towering over me, blocking all of what little sunlight still remained. It smelled horrible, and I could feel this heat just radiating from its body. It smacked me away to the ground with its hand and sent the gun flying out of my hands. Joshua kept shooting at this thing. I kept watching while I hit the ground, but in just a split second, I don't even know. My memory is so shitty and blurry at this point because it all seems so surreal. 1 minute Joshua was standing there, and the next he was on the floor. This creature, it punched him. It punched him in a way that pushed him into the ground. Just one smooth motion. And after that, I didn't see Joshua move again. This thing walked over to me after he had punched Joshua, and I thought that was it for me. I thought that I was going to die right then and there. But all it did was just stare at me for a while. It crouched down really, really low to the ground, and it breathed all over my face, and it let out a couple of these snort-like sounds. I'm not really sure how to describe them. Not like a pig snorting, but I don't know. I felt something wet like saliva hit my face when it did this. I remember it made this motion like it was going to punch me too, and I just closed my eyes and just accepted my fate, and I felt ready. But I heard a crack and felt the ground shake, and I felt myself being jostled around from the force of whatever this thing just did. And when I opened my eyes right back up, my rifle was in 2 pieces on the floor. This thing had destroyed it. This creature, it just walked over to the deer that Joshua had shot dead, and it picked it up. This thing just slung the deer over its shoulder and went bounding into the trees until it disappeared. I had the wind smacked out of me by this thing, and I could hardly breathe. All I could do was just drag myself over to Joshua, because I did not have the strength to even stand up. When I finally got over to him, all I could do was just turn away and vomit. It was a horrible sight, to say the least. I hate to be so vulgar, but his body was pulverized. Whatever force this thing had put into its strike, it had partially crushed Joshua's skull, until things were spilling out of him. He looked like he had a lot of broken bones, and he was not breathing, not at all, not even a wheeze. It was obvious, but I still wanted to hope that he would still be alive, but he wasn't. He was dead, and I just started crying right then and there. I had no idea what to do with myself. For a while, I just sat next to the body, shaking him, hoping he might wake up somehow. I don't know how. I was just begging for a miracle to happen, like the other day. I couldn't even call the police. There wasn't a payphone around for miles. My dad, he didn't even have a landline phone set up. That's how rural we were. I just dragged myself back to my camp slowly until I could get to my things again. I just packed up whatever I could carry and left in my dad's truck that we had driven here in. When I finally got home, I broke down crying to my dad. I wasn't a kid who cried a lot, and my dad, well, he wasn't really fond of seeing men cry. But this one time, he did not say a word about it, like he could just sense that something was wrong. He actually gave me a hug and calmed me down. He just got me to tell him the entire story. He had a serious look on his face the entire time I spoke. Even when I finished, he didn't say anything. He didn't even make fun of me. I just kept talking, and at one point, he just told me to stop. He got up and told me to let him handle it, and I just crawled into my bed upstairs. I didn't even sleep, I couldn't. I don't know exactly what my dad did and said. Police came around at some point. I had to speak to them. It took me a very long time because I kept breaking down and crying. My dad came up with a cover story for me. Told me to just say that we had been attacked by an animal. That I didn't really know what it was, but that I had to run away because it was going to kill me too. I don't think they really bought the story. Joshua's dad, well, he didn't think too fondly of me. He thought I was a lying bastard who wanted to cover up the truth. The police said that with the injuries caused and what they found on the scene, that it could not possibly be me that killed him. It was a long process that was not solved anywhere near as quickly as I make out here. It was one of the longest and most traumatic periods of my life, but I got through it eventually. I was eventually told that the police would not need to speak to me anymore, that they were just going to write it off as an animal attack. I just kept my head down mostly after that. I dropped out of school and just started working for my father every day. I still wanted to move away from that life, but it was much better than being called a murderer every day that I went into school. People making jokes and bullying me. My life was hell in that school. I'd even lost my only friend. So, that's my story, Hex. You can make of it what you will. There isn't a single day in my life that I don't wish I could go back in time and stop us ever going into the woods that day. Maybe if I never befriended Joshua, maybe if I didn't beg my dad to teach him how to hunt, maybe he would still be alive to this day. I can't help but feel immense guilt over all of it. If he'd never met me, then he would be happy and alive and probably have a family. I took all of that away from him. I am a fucking monster. I am pretty old. This happened actually back in 1989 when I was just a kid. It was one of the last days before winter break. School finally lets out and I had never been more excited. And it begins to snow. It never snows here in Texas. Never. So everyone is really excited. Me and a bunch of other kids, we usually walk home together. We take a shortcut through a field. None of us had ever seen snow in real life. We are all walking with our heads tilted back, catching snowflakes on our tongues. We're just laughing. Then one of the kids yells out, "Hey." We all look at him to see what was up, and he says, "Someone just grabbed me." We laugh at him. There's nobody around but us. What's he even talking about? We just keep on going. We are still catching snowflakes on our tongues. We are laughing again. But that same kid, he makes a panic sound. Then he just takes off running. For some reason, we all take off after him. I'm not sure about the others, but the panic sound he made, it really scared me. I am nervously running after the kid, but he is way too fast, and he is way ahead of us now. We just hear him start yelling, "Let me go." There is nobody anywhere near him, but he sounds like he's freaking out. Then I see him trip over, but he falls really unnaturally. He slips over to his right into a bayou that runs through the field. Holy shit. We all run towards where he fell. He is down at the bottom. He is not moving whatsoever. This blood, it just starts pooling all around his head. We all flip out. We race home and tell our parents what just happened, what we just saw. The kid did not make it. For years, all I remembered was the sight of this kid falling into the bayou. But later, I remembered just how weird he was acting before. Like I said, I'm pretty old, but the way he yelled "let go of me" was the most panicked shit I've ever heard to this day. Okay, so this story I'm about to tell, it happened this year, probably about a month ago. So my friend and I, we went camping. We spent the whole day fishing, just cooking food and stuff, just having a real good time. All is well. It's starting to get darker outside. We set up a shelter. We didn't have tents, but we tied a tarp above us to act as a roof. We finally settle into our sleeping bags in our shelter. We're talking about some random shit and just lying next to the fire, trying to keep warm. I suddenly hear a noise that was so loud that I nearly shit myself. It was this huge cracking and then a ground-shaking thud. A tree fell over, probably 30 meters away from our shelter. Fuck, that was really close. I realized that there was no wind or anything to even push the tree over, so we go and investigate. This tree was clearly rooted before, and it wasn't rotten or weakened, so this must have been moved by something heavy or very strong. So we talk for a few more hours and then go to bed. After a few hours of sleep, I am awakened by what sounds like sticks breaking near me. I lie there for a minute and just listen hard. Shit, there it is again. Footsteps and sticks breaking. The footsteps are one after another, as if done by 2 feet, not 4. This is not an animal. I grab my flashlight, wake up my friend, and look around from our shelter. I shout out, "Hello?" No reply. The footsteps stop in their tracks. Is anyone there? The footsteps start up again, getting closer. Answer us. I have a weapon, and I will shoot you if I don't get a reply. Still no reply. Shit. I ring my beer bell and shout angrily at whatever it is, all while having my gun ready. Still no reply. So after maybe 30 minutes of this shit, I get pissed. I get up, get into clothes, and walk out towards the sound, just to get a view of what this is. Just as I approach an area where I think the sound is coming from, another tree just falls over, 10 meters away from me. After that, I ran like hell back to my sleeping bag, and my friend and I built up our fire to scare away whatever it was. Needless to say, at first light of morning, we got the hell out of there. I told the story when we got home to both friends and family, but no one ever believed us. I have still no idea what the hell it was.